Elizabeth's not here today. She had to go to Phoenix. Her mother took a turn for the worse, so she had to fly out yesterday.
Okay. So be praying for them.
Absolutely. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Hear Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Leolom Vayed. Blessed be the name of his glorious kingdom forever and ever. V'ahavta et Adonai Eloheka b'chol lavaveka uv'kol nafsheka uv'kol meodecha. And you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. V'hayu hadvarim hayala asher anochi misvekah hayom alavavecha. And these words which I command you today shall be upon your heart. Vishanan tam levenecha v'debarta bam bevsheka bevteka uvlecha v'rarech uvshachbeka uvkamecha. And you shall teach them diligently to your children, and you shall speak of them when you sit at home, when you walk along the way, when you lie down, and when you rise up. Ukshatam leolot al yadeka v'hayu le'totafot bim inecha. And you shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be for frontlets between your eyes. Uktavtam al muzazot betecha uvesharecha. And you shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. V'hafa la'recha kamocha. And you shall love your neighbor as yourself. We're going to go ahead and jump right into reading this morning, starting in Deuteronomy, beginning in chapter 3, verse 23. Going to 7:11. And we'll have Slurpees.
Slurpees.
You know, yesterday was the 50th anniversary of Slurpee, you know that. I also pleaded with the Lord at that time, saying, O Lord God, thou hast begun to show thy servant thy greatness and thy strong hand. For what God is there in heaven or on earth who can do such works and mighty acts as thine? Let me, I pray, cross over and see the fair land that is beyond the Jordan, that good hill country in Lebanon. But the Lord was angry with me on your account and would not listen to me. And the Lord said to me, Enough, speak to me no more of this matter. Go up to the top of Pisgah and lift up your eyes to the west and north and south and east, and see it with your eyes, for you shall not cross over this Jordan. But charge Joshua and encourage him and strengthen him, for he shall go across at the head of his people, and he shall give them as an inheritance the land which you will see. So we remained in the valley opposite Beth Peor. And now, O Israel, listen to the statutes and the judgments which I am teaching you to perform, in order that you may live and go in and take possession of the land which the Lord, the God of your fathers, is giving you. You shall not add to the word which I am commanding you, nor take away from it, that you may keep the commandments of the Lord your God which I command you. Your eyes have seen what the Lord has done in the case of Baal Peor. For all the men who followed Baal Peor, the Lord your God destroyed them from among you. But if you held fast to the Lord your God, but you who held fast to the Lord your God are alive today, every one of you. See, I have taught you statutes and judgments, just as the Lord had commanded me, that you should do thus in the land where you are entering to possess it. So keep and do them. For that is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the peoples who will hear all the statutes and say, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. For what great nation is there that has a God so near to it as the Lord our God whenever we call on him? Or what great nation is there that has statutes and judgments as righteous as this whole law which I am setting before you today? Only give heed to yourself, and keep your soul diligently, lest you forget the things which your eyes have seen, and lest they depart from your heart all the days of your life, but make them known to your sons and your grandsons. Remember the day you stood before the Lord your God at Horeb, when the Lord said to me, assemble the people to me, so that I may let them hear my words, so that they may learn to fear me all the days they live on the earth, and that they may teach their children. And you came near and stood at the foot of the mountain, and the mountain burned with fire to the very heart of the heavens, darkness, cloud, and thick gloom. Then the Lord spoke to you from the midst of the fire. You heard the sound of words, but you saw no form, only a voice. So he declared to you his covenant, which he commanded you to perform, that is, the 10 Commandments, and he wrote them on 2 tablets of stone. And the Lord commanded me at that time to teach you the statutes and judgments, that you might perform them in the land where you are going over to possess it. So watch yourselves carefully, since you did not see any form on the day the Lord spoke to you at Horeb from the midst of the fire, lest you act corruptly and make yourselves a graven image in the form of any figure, the likeness of male or female, the likeness of any animal that is on the earth, the likeness of any winged bird that flies in the sky, the likeness of anything that creeps on the ground, the likeness of any fish that is in the water below the earth. And beware, lest you lift up your eyes to heaven and see the sun and the moon and the stars, all the host of heaven, and be drawn away and worship them and serve them, those which the Lord your God has allotted to all the peoples under the whole heaven. But the Lord has taken you and brought you out from the iron furnace, from Egypt, to be a people for his own possession, as today. Now the Lord was angry with me on your account, and swore that I should not cross the Jordan, and that I should not enter the good land which the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance. For I shall die in this land. I shall not cross the Jordan, but you shall cross and take possession of this good land. So watch yourselves, lest you forget the covenant of the Lord your God, which he made with you, and make for yourselves a graven image in the form of anything against which the Lord your God has commanded you. For the Lord your God is a consuming fire, a jealous God. When you become the father of children and children's children, and remain long in the land, and act corruptly, and make an idol in the form of anything, and do that which is evil in the sight of the Lord your God, so as to provoke him to anger, I call heaven and earth to witness against you today, that you shall surely perish quickly from the land where you are going over the Jordan to possess it. You shall not live long on it, but shall be utterly destroyed. And the Lord will scatter you among the peoples, and you shall be left few in number among the nations, where the Lord shall drive you. And there you will serve gods, the work of man's hands, wood and stone, which neither see nor hear nor eat nor smell. But from there you will seek the Lord your God, and you will find him if you search for him with all your heart and with all your soul. When you are in distress, and all these things have come upon you in the latter days, you will return to the Lord your God and listen to his voice. For the Lord your God is a compassionate God. He will not fail you, nor destroy you, nor forget the covenant with your fathers which he swore to them. Indeed, ask now concerning the former days which were before you, since the day that God created man on the earth, and inquire from one end of the heavens to the other, has anything been done like this great thing, or has anything been heard like it? Has any people heard the voice of God speaking from the midst of the fire, as you have heard it, and survived? Or has a God tried to go to take for himself a nation from within another nation by trials, by signs and wonders, and by war, and by a mighty hand, and by an outstretched arm, and by great terrors, as the Lord your God did for you in Egypt before your eyes. To you it was shown that you might know the Lord. He is God. There is no other besides him. Out of the heavens he let you hear his voice to discipline you, and on earth he let you see his great fire, and you heard his words from the midst of the fire. Because he loved your fathers, therefore he chose their descendants after them. And he personally brought you from Egypt by his great power, driving out from before you nations greater and mightier than you, to bring you in and to give you their land for an inheritance, as it is today. Know therefore today, and take it to your heart, that the Lord, he is God in heaven above and on the earth below. There is no other. So you shall keep his statutes and his commandments, which I am giving you today, that it may go well with you and with your children after you, and that you may live long on the land which the Lord your God is giving you for all time. Then Moses set apart 3 cities across the Jordan to the east, that a manslayer might flee there who unintentionally slew his neighbor without having enmity toward him in the time past, and by fleeing to one of these cities he might live. Bezer in the wilderness on the plateau for the Reubenites, and Ramoth in Gilead for the Gadites, and Golan in Bashan for the Manassites. Now this is the law which Moses set before the land of Israel. These are the testimonies and the statutes and the ordinances which Moses spoke to the sons of Israel when they came out from Egypt, across the Jordan, in the valley opposite Beth Peor, in the land of Sihon, king of the Amorites, who lived at Heshbon, whom Moses and the sons of Israel defeated when they came out from Egypt. And they took possession of this land, and the land of Og, king of Bashan, the 2 kings of the Amorites who were across the Jordan to the east, from Aroer, which is on the edge of the valley of Arnon, even as far as Mount Sion, that is Hermon, with all the Arabah across the Jordan to the east, even as far as the sea of the Arabah, at the foot of the slopes of Pisgah. Then Moses summoned all Israel and said to them, Hear, O Israel, the statutes and the ordinances which I am speaking today in your hearing, that you may learn them and observe them carefully. The Lord our God made a covenant with us at Horeb. The Lord did not make this covenant with our fathers, but with us, and with all of us alive here today. The Lord spoke to you face to face at the mountain from the midst of the fire, while I was standing between the Lord and you at that time, to declare to you the word of the Lord, for you were afraid because of the fire and did not go up the mountain. He said, I am the Lord your God, who brought you out from the land of Egypt and from the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself an idol, or any likeness of what is in heaven above, or on the earth beneath, or in the water under the earth. You shall not worship them, nor serve them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children, and on the 3rd and 4th generations of those who hate me, but showing loving kindness to thousands, to those who love me and keep my commandments. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not leave him unpunished who takes his name in vain. Observe the Sabbath day to keep it holy, as the Lord your God commanded. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. But the 7th day is a Sabbath of the Lord your God. In it you shall not do any work, you or your son, or your daughter, or your male servant, or your female servant, or your ox or your donkey, or any of your cattle, or your sojourner who stays with you, so that your male servant and your female servant may rest as well as you. And you shall remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt, and the Lord your God brought you out of there by a mighty hand and an outstretched arm, Therefore the Lord your God commanded you to observe this Sabbath day. Honor your father and your mother, as the Lord your God has commanded you, that your days may be prolonged, and that it may go well with you in the land which the Lord your God gives you. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, and you shall not desire your neighbor's house, his field, or his male servant, or his female servant, or his ox, or his donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. These words which the Lord spoke to all of your assembly at the mountain from the midst of fire, of the cloud, and of the thick gloom, with a great voice, and he added no more. And he wrote them on 2 tablets of stone, and gave them to me. And it came about, when you heard the voice from the midst of the darkness, while the mountain was burning with fire, that you came near to me, all the heads of your tribes and your elders. And you said, Behold, the Lord our God has shown us his glory and his greatness, and we have heard his voice from the midst of the fire. We have seen today that God speaks with man, yet he lives. Now then, why should we die? For this great fire will consume us. If we hear the voice of the Lord our God any longer, then we shall die. For who is there of all flesh who has heard the voice of the living God speaking to him from the midst of the fire, as we have, and lived? Go near and hear all that the Lord our God says. Then speak to us all that the Lord our God will speak to you, and we will hear and do it. And the Lord instructed. And the Lord heard the voice of your words when you spoke to me. And the Lord said to me, I have heard the voice of the words of the people, which they have spoken to you. They have done well in all that they have spoken. Oh, that they had such a heart in them, that they would fear me and keep all my commandments always, that it may be well with them and with their sons forever. Go, say to them, return to your tents. But as for you, stand here by me, that I may speak to you all the commandments and the statutes and the judgments which you shall teach them, that they may observe them in the land which I am giving them to possess. So you shall observe to do just as the Lord your God has commanded you. You shall not turn aside to the right or to the left. You shall walk in all the way which the Lord your God has commanded you, that you may live, and that it may be well with you, and that you may prolong your days in the land which you shall possess. Now this is the commandment, the statutes and the judgments which the Lord your God has commanded me to teach you, that you might do them in the land where you are going over to possess it, so that you and your sons and your grandsons might fear the Lord and Lord your God, to keep all his statutes and his commandments which I command you all the days of your life, and that your days may be prolonged. O Israel, you should listen and be careful to do it, that it may be well with you, and that you may be multiplied greatly, just as the Lord, the God of your fathers, has promised you, in a land flowing with milk and honey. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. And you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your might. And these words which I am commanding you today shall be on your heart. And you shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you rise up, and when you lie down, and when you rise up. And you shall bind them as a sign in your hand, on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets on your forehead. And you shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Then it shall come about, when the Lord your God brings you into the land which he swore to your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to give you, great and splendid cities which you did not build, and houses full of good things which you did not fill, and hewn cisterns which you did not dig, vineyards and olive trees which you did not plant, and you shall eat and be satisfied. Then watch yourself, lest you forget the Lord who brought you from the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall fear only the Lord your God, and you shall worship him and swear by his name. You shall not follow other gods, any of the gods of the peoples who surround you. For the Lord your God in the midst of you is a jealous God. Otherwise, the anger of the Lord your God will be kindled against you, and he will wipe you off the face of the earth. You shall not put the Lord your God to the test, as you tested him at Massah. You should diligently keep the commandments of the Lord your God, and his testimonies, and his statutes which he has commanded you. And you shall do what is right and good in the sight of the Lord, that it may be well with you, and that you may go in and possess the good land which the Lord swore to give to your fathers, by driving out all of your enemies from there before you, just as the Lord has spoken. When your son asks you in time to come, saying, what do the testimonies and the statutes and the judgments mean which the Lord our God has commanded you? Then you shall say to your son, we were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt, and the Lord brought us from Egypt with a mighty hand. Moreover, the Lord showed great and distressing signs and wonders before our eyes against Egypt, Pharaoh, and all of his household. And he brought us out from there in order to bring us in, to give us the land which he had sworn to our fathers. So the Lord commanded us to observe all the statutes, to fear the Lord our God for our good always, and for our survival as it is today. And it will be righteousness for us if we are careful to observe all his commandments before the Lord our God, just as he commanded us. When the Lord your God shall bring you into the land where you are entering to possess it, and shall clear away many nations before you, the Hittites, and the Girgashites, and the Amorites, and the Canaanites, and the Perizzites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites, 7 nations greater and stronger than you. And when the Lord your God shall deliver them before you, and you shall defeat them, then you shall utterly destroy them. You shall make no covenant with them, and show them no mercy or favor. Correction. You shall make no covenant with them, and show no favor to them. Furthermore, you shall not intermarry with them. You shall not give your daughters to their sons, nor shall you take their daughters for your sons. For they will turn your sons away from following me to serve other gods. Then the anger of the Lord will be kindled against you, and he will quickly destroy you. But thus you shall do to them. You shall tear down their altars, and smash their sacred pillars, and hew down their asherim, and burn their graven images with fire. For you are a holy people to the Lord your God. The Lord your God has chosen you to be a people for his own possession out of all the peoples who are upon the face of the earth. The Lord did not set his love on you, nor choose you because you were more in number than any of the peoples, for you were the fewest of all peoples, but because the Lord loved you and kept an oath which he swore to your forefathers. The Lord brought you out by a mighty hand and redeemed you from the house of slavery, from the land of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Know therefore that the Lord your God, he is God, the faithful God, who keeps his covenant and his loving kindness to 1,000th generation, and with those who love him and keep his commandments, but repays those who hate him to their faces and destroy them. He will not delay with him who hates him. He will repay him to his face. Therefore you shall keep the commandments and the statutes and the judgments which I am commanding you to do to them today. Which I am commanding today. I want to get it right, folks. Therefore you shall keep the commandment and the statutes and the judgments which I am commanding you today to do them. May the Lord add his blessings to the reading of his word.
Since Elizabeth is not here today, she explained that she had left some notes here on the dais, or whatever you would call this, music stand, to go through. First of all, in this week's Parsha, Moses began his personal speech summarizing Israel's 40-year history of wandering in the wilderness, leading up to the conquests of Sihon and Og. The Israelites were now in the land of Moab, just east of the Jordan, waiting to enter the promised land. This portion of Torah includes some of the most fundamental texts of the Jewish scriptures, including the Ten Commandments, the Shema, the duty to love God and study His Torah, and the commandments of phylacteries and mezuzahs. In addition, this portion includes Moses' prediction of the exile and the eventual redemption of the Jewish people in the end of days. Moses continued his speech by telling the people that after Sihon and Og were conquered, he pled with the Lord to let him enter the promised land to finish the job against the 7 nations of Canaan, despite his sin at Meribah. According to Jewish tradition, Moses begged the Lord in 515 different ways to be given an exemption for his sin. Now this number is from the gematria of the word Vahetchanan, but the Lord refused each time. No, Moses would die with the men of his generation in the wilderness. However, he was given the opportunity to see the land of promise from the top of Mount Nebo, also called Pisgah, from Pasak, meaning to pass between. Apart from this glimpse, however, Moses was forbidden to cross the Jordan. Joshua, a type of Mashiach Yeshua, would be the one to bring the people into the land of promise. Since the Israelites were about to take possession of the land without him, Moses called on them to earnestly keep the commandments of the Lord. And now, O Israel, listen to the statutes and the rules that I am teaching you, and do them, that you may live and go in and take possession of the land that the Lord, the God of your fathers, is giving you. It is forbidden to add to or beautify the commandments of the Torah, or even to add fences to the Torah. Adding to the Torah commandments will inevitably lead to a distortion of their original intent, and therefore to eventual disobedience to God's clear instructions. The keeping and doing of the commandments will impart wisdom and understanding to the people, and this will glorify the Lord before all the nations. God spoke face to face with those gathered before Moses, and not only with their fathers. In addition to the 10 Commandments, Moses was commanded to instruct the people regarding various statutes and judgments that were to be observed in the land that the Lord was giving to Israel. Idolatry of any kind, therefore, was forbidden to the people. The Lord is absolutely unique and without peer in the universe. He cannot be represented with any sort of graven image or artistic representation. He is not to be identified with the physical universe, but stands in relation to it as Creator and Lord. The Lord, Yahweh here identifies himself as Elkanah, the jealous God, a designation repeated elsewhere in Scriptures. In memory of the marriage ceremony between Israel and God, a Jew who engages in idolatry is like a spouse who willfully engages in adultery. Indeed, idolatry is a form of spiritual adultery. The Lord watches over Israel lovingly and closely, like a faithful and passionate husband watches over his beloved wife. Moses prophesied that if the Jews later forgot the Lord and served idols, they would perish from the promised land and be put to exile. However, if they would turn to the Lord and do teshuvah with all their hearts and all their souls, Adonai would have mercy upon them. Notice that Moses relied on the Lord's covenantal promise given to Abraham as the basis for God's ultimate mercy and restoration of Israel in the latter days. Notice further that this restoration of Israel from her long exile will be accomplished only when they are in tribulation. This agrees with the words of the Mashiach Yeshua, who foretold of the coming troubles of Israel in the latter days, in Matthew 24. Only after Israel cries out, Baruch haba B'Shem Adonai, in references to Yeshua, will they be delivered during the 70 birth pangs of the Messiah, otherwise called the time of Jacob's trouble. The time immediately before the coming of the Mashiach is called Ikavot Meshishika, the footsteps of the Messiah, a phrase that comes from Psalm 89:51. Moses then designated 3 cities of refuge east of the Jordan, repeated the 10 commandments, expounded the greatest commandment of the Torah, which is the Shema, instructed that tefillin or phylacteries be used as a sign upon one's hand or forehead, and commanded that Israelite doorposts be marked with mezuzot, or mezuzahs. Moses further warned the Israelites not to forget the Lord after they entered the land and were established as a prosperous people. They were to avoid assimilation and to always remember that they were God's treasured people. And that is from A Year Through the Torah, A Week-by-Week Journey for Christians by John J. Parsons. And that's all that I have. Roger, would you have some verse for us?
The Torah is the church that I grew up in didn't put a lot of emphasis on it, but the Messianic movement does. And it's interesting that in the book of Isaiah it says that the Lord will make the Torah honorable, and later in the book of Psalms it says that he who loves the Torah will have great peace. And so I like that, and I have tried to memorize the things in the Torah since I came to give greater preference to it. I think that the Lord himself quoted and believed he stuck up for Moses and everything there. And so if in one of the verses I memorized was Numbers 10, 35, 36. When they were out in the desert, wandering, going from place to place with the ark that they had built. It says, "Then it came about, when the ark set out, that Moses said, Rise up, O Lord, and let thine enemies be scattered, and let those who hate thee flee before thee. And when it came to rest, he said, Return thou, O Lord, to the myriad thousands of Israel." Now when I used to read that, I thought, well, that's a nice little blessing in the morning, and a nice little benediction at night. But on further study of it, it's way deeper than that. When Moses said those words, the Lord had not died on the cross and risen yet. And there he says, "Rise up, O Lord, and let thine enemies be scattered." And that is what happened on the cross. Nothing scattered his enemies more than that. And then the next verse talks about in the evening, he said, and when it came to rest, he said, "Return thou, O Lord, to the myriad thousands of Israel." Here we are 2,000 years about since the Lord died and resurrected, and we're waiting for it. And there Moses said, "Return thou, O Lord, to the myriad thousands of Israel." So I love that prayer that Moses said way back then. Thank you.
Messiah and the Festivals, a month of special gatherings. We're going to be doing it on 3 weekends with 3 workshops on each weekend. September 9th and 10th, 16th and 17th, 23rd and 24th. Starting here at Fridays at 6:30 and Saturday at 3 p.m. and 6:30 p.m. And Elizabeth will be going through the first week. It'll be the work of Messiah and the primary festivals. And the second weekend will be Messiah and Us, the secondary festivals. And the third weekend is following Messiah in time, the regular festivals. And it will be here at Sabbath Streams. And again, they're on the back there, and this is also posted on the website for anybody viewing out there that might be interested in coming. All right, well, Father, we thank you again for allowing us to get together and worship you and learn from your word. And we ask that you would bless us all, and bless Roger, and thank you for him bringing
Yes.
his scripture message to us as well, God. Again, we ask for mercies for Elizabeth and her mother and her sister's family down in Phoenix.
Yes.
We thank you so much for the healing that you have given Leanne. And we just praise you, God, for the fact that you are still the healer, that you are a miracle worker. And God, we ask that as we leave today, that you would give us blessings as well and keep us safe until we can get together again and be with those that could not be here today. We ask in the name of Yeshua HaMashiach. Amen. The Lord bless you, and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you. The Lord bless you, and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you, and be gracious unto you, and be gracious unto you. The Lord lift up his countenance on you and give you peace. Shabbat Shalom.